My girlfriend wrote, Step 1, dress like my ex. Step 2, earn like my ex. I wrote back, Step 1, pack. Step 2, leave. I wasn't snooping. That's the first thing I told myself when it happened. My laptop had been giving me trouble for weeks, the fan wheezing like a dying vacuum cleaner. So when I saw her notebook lying open on the desk, I didn't think twice about flipping it closed so the pages wouldn't bend. But instead of closing it, my eyes caught on the words scrawled across the top of the page in black ink, underlined twice. Step 1, dress like Ryan. Step 2, earn like Ryan. Ryan. The name sat on the page like a nail in my chest. Her ex. The one she swore had been nothing but a lesson from her past. At first, I thought it was some kind of joke, maybe a throwaway thought she'd written down after too much wine. But the more I looked, the more the page opened up into something bigger. It wasn't just 2 steps. She'd written out entire instructions, what haircut I should get, the brands of shoes he wore, the gym he used to go to, even the way he structured his LinkedIn profile. She'd scribbled notes about side hustles, investments, and how he always knew how to command a room. It wasn't a joke. It was a blueprint, a map to turn me into a shadow of the man she still couldn't let go of. I felt heat crawl up my neck as I stood there, staring at the page, my hands trembling. She was in the shower, humming some pop song off-key, completely oblivious that the person she lived with was watching his whole life reduced to a checklist. I wanted to slam the notebook shut and never think about it again. Pretend I hadn't seen it. But something inside me snapped. It wasn't just the insult of being compared, it was the planning. She wasn't waiting for me to become a better man on my own. She wanted to mold me, step by step, into someone else entirely. The water stopped. I barely had time to process before she came out, towel wrapped around her, hair dripping onto the floor. She noticed me standing there, notebook in my hand, and froze for a split second. Then she smirked. Not embarrassed, not apologetic. Smirking. That smirk lit me on fire. I confronted her right there, notebook still open, my voice louder than I expected. She didn't flinch. She leaned against the doorframe and asked if I was really that sensitive. She told me it was just self-improvement notes, that I should feel lucky she was trying to push me toward success instead of settling for mediocrity. Her tone was casual, almost playful, but every word dug deeper. She wasn't denying it. She wasn't even trying to soften the blow. She was mocking me, daring me to react. I did. I don't remember every word that came out of my mouth, only the volume. My anger filled the apartment, bouncing off the walls, spilling out the open window. I told her exactly what I thought of her, the list, her obsession with her ex, everything I'd swallowed for months. She shot back just as loud, calling me ungrateful, insecure, boring. It didn't take long before the neighbors started knocking on the wall. Then came the voices in the hallway. Someone must have heard enough to get curious, because when I stormed into the living room, shouting over her, I saw 2 of our neighbors standing at the door, wide-eyed. And she didn't stop. Instead of shutting down, she raised her voice even louder, spinning the whole thing into some twisted performance. She accused me of being paranoid, of inventing stories because I couldn't handle the truth. She even waved the notebook in the air like evidence, laughing as if the whole building should take her side. It was humiliating. My private relationship had been dragged into the hallway, my dignity stripped in front of people I barely knew. I could hear someone upstairs open a window just to listen in. The walls of the place felt too thin, every sound amplified. I snapped. I didn't hit her, didn't touch her. But the words I used, the ones I spat out in that moment, were sharp enough to slice through steel. I told her she was pathetic, clinging to a ghost, too weak to stand on her own without comparing everyone to a man who'd already moved on from her. I told her she wasn't a partner, she was an anchor. The silence after that was thick. The neighbors lingered, unsure whether to step in or retreat. She stood there with her mouth open, cheeks flushed red, caught between fury and shock. For the first time since I'd known her, she didn't have a comeback. I walked into the bedroom, grabbed my keys, and left without looking back. Outside, the night air hit me like ice. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I wandered for hours, past closed shops and dim streetlights, my thoughts spinning in a storm. The list wasn't just words on paper. It was proof that I'd been nothing but a project to her. A replacement she'd been trying to carve into shape. By the time I came back, the hallway was empty. She was sitting on the couch, arms crossed, still defiant. She told me I'd overreacted, that I should man up instead of running away. She said the list was supposed to motivate me, not hurt me. But I wasn't listening anymore. Something in me had shifted. The anger had settled into something colder, harder. I wasn't going to scream again. I wasn't going to beg her to see me for who I was. That night, while she ranted, I looked at her and saw not the woman I'd once thought I loved, but an adversary. Someone I couldn't trust. Someone I could never forgive. And somewhere deep inside, the first sparks of revenge began to flicker. I didn't leave the apartment that night. Not really. I came back after midnight, calm enough to slide into bed without another word. She was already asleep, back turned, breathing steady like nothing had happened. It amazed me, her ability to shut it all off, to convince herself she had the upper hand. But my mind wasn't still. I lay there in the dark staring at the ceiling, her notebook still etched in my memory. Step 1. Step 2. And all the steps in between. My girlfriend hadn't written down dreams for us. She'd written down a blueprint for my replacement. I wasn't going to cry over that. I wasn't going to beg her to throw the notebook away. From that night forward, my goal was simple. I would make her feel the same helplessness she had tried to force on me. The next morning, I woke before her, made coffee, and went about my routine like nothing had changed. She came out of the bedroom in leggings and a sweater, hair pulled back, and glanced at me carefully, probably waiting for me to explode again. I didn't. I asked if she wanted eggs. Her shoulders loosened. She must have thought the storm had passed. That was the first move, letting her think I was pacified. I went to work with the taste of bitterness still in my mouth. I sat through meetings, emails, the usual office chatter, but my focus was elsewhere. I couldn't stop replaying her smirk, her laughter, her casual cruelty. That wasn't something I could ignore. It wasn't just disrespect, it was contempt. By lunchtime, I had made up my mind. If she saw me as a project, then I'd make sure her little experiment failed spectacularly. I started small, subtle. She'd left her notebook on the desk again, pages still open. Instead of tearing it up or throwing it out, I read more of it. She had a section labeled Appearance Goals, haircut suggestions, wardrobe brands, even notes about posture and tone of voice. It read like a shopping list for building a better man. My jaw tightened as I scanned the lines, but instead of confronting her again, I closed it carefully and walked away. That night, I deliberately did the opposite of what she'd written. She wanted me to wear fitted shirts like Ryan. I pulled on my oldest, loosest hoodie. She wanted me to order fancy supplements. I poured a glass of soda and drank it slowly while watching TV. She noticed. I could see it in the way her eyes flicked over me, the slight curl of her lips. She didn't comment, but I knew she was tallying up my failures. I wanted her to. Within days, her tone shifted. She grew colder, sharper, as if she were the disappointed teacher and I was the lazy student. She made offhand comments about how I could look better if I tried. She dropped hints about how Ryan always kept himself disciplined. Every jab was meant to sting, to wear me down into compliance. But I didn't snap this time. I smiled, nodded, and tucked every word away like ammunition. I also started paying closer attention to her. The way she spent her evenings, the excuses she made. She'd always claimed she was at yoga on Tuesdays, but I noticed her mat was still rolled up in the corner every time she came home from class. She said she had late work calls, yet her laptop barely had new files opened. Something didn't add up. One night, while she was in the shower, I checked her bag. It wasn't about trust anymore. It was about clarity. Inside I found receipts. Not for groceries or gym classes, but for wine bars, cafes, restaurants I'd never been to with her. And the times on those slips lined up with the nights she'd sworn she was too busy for me. My stomach twisted, but not with heartbreak. It was rage and confirmation. The list wasn't just about shaping me into Ryan. It was about keeping herself entertained until she decided which of us fit her future better. I didn't slam the receipts on the table. I didn't accuse her. Instead, I slid them back in her bag, careful to fold them exactly how they were, and waited. The next weekend, I suggested we spend Saturday together. Just a casual walk through the park, maybe grab dinner. She hesitated, then said she'd already made plans with a friend. I nodded, pretending to accept it. Then, once she left, I followed. It wasn't hard. She wasn't cautious. She walked straight into a downtown cafe, phone in hand, and within minutes, Ryan arrived. He looked older than the photos I'd seen, but he carried himself with the same smug confidence she idolized. Watching them sit together, her leaning in, her laugh too loud, it was like a punch to the gut. But I didn't storm inside. I stood across the street, half hidden behind a newsstand, memorizing everything. The way she touched his arm, the way she tilted her head just enough to show she was invested. They didn't kiss, not then, but they didn't need to. The intent was written all over their faces. That was when the outline of my revenge sharpened. This wasn't about catching her cheating in bed. That would have been too easy, too dramatic. No, what I wanted was to dismantle her pride, to make her feel powerless, small, and desperate. When she came home that evening, she acted casual. She said her friend had gone through a breakup and needed comfort. She even tried to cuddle up to me on the couch, as if nothing had changed. I let her. I wrapped an arm around her shoulders, steady and calm, all while knowing exactly where she'd been and with whom. Every second of it fueled me. Over the next week, I started my counterattack in earnest. Not loud, not obvious, quiet moves, calculated ones. I began withdrawing my attention. When she spoke, I answered with clipped responses. When she hinted for affection, I delayed. When she wanted plans, I always had work. She was used to control, to dictating the pace of our relationship, and suddenly I wasn't playing along. It rattled her. One night she asked why I'd been so distant. I shrugged, told her I was just tired, nothing more. She didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes, but she didn't press further. Instead, she doubled down on her list, pushing me harder, nagging me about gym memberships, criticizing my clothes, even suggesting I network better, like Ryan used to. Every word was fuel. Every dig was a reminder that I was on the right path. And then came the twist I didn't expect. A friend of mine, Evan, texted me out of the blue. He'd been at the same cafe last week, the one I'd followed her to, and he'd seen her with Ryan. He didn't know the full story, only that it looked suspicious. He asked if I was okay. I told him I was fine, thanked him, and told him not to say anything. The fact that others were starting to notice meant her mask was slipping, even without my help. That night, lying in bed beside her, I realized just how far I'd come in a matter of days. A week ago, I'd been humiliated, furious, screaming in front of neighbors. Now, I was quiet, deliberate, every move guided by something colder than anger. She thought she was shaping me into Ryan 2.0. She thought her little list was the script I'd follow. But the truth was, I'd already started writing my own. And on that list, there were only 2 steps. Step 1, wait. Step 2, strike. The morning after I followed her to the cafe, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, razor in hand, and studied myself. My hair was longer than usual, curling a little around the edges. My beard had grown scruffier than I liked. My hoodie hung loose. On the counter sat her notebook, left open once again, like bait. The page outlined Ryan's haircut, the brand of jacket he wore, the way he styled his beard. I picked up the razor, turned it in my hand, and felt a strange calmness spread through me. That morning, I shaved the beard down to stubble. Later that week, I booked an appointment at the same barbershop Ryan used to go to. The name was circled in her notes. And when I walked into the apartment that evening with sharper lines and shorter hair, I caught the flicker in her eyes before she could disguise it. She didn't say anything at first. She only watched me, lips pressed together as though holding back a smile. Then, casually, she asked if I wanted to go shopping on Saturday. Just to update your look, she said, almost too innocently. I agreed. That weekend, she dragged me through store after store, pointing out jackets, shoes, button-down shirts. She'd hold them up against me, tilt her head, and nod approvingly. And every time I let her think I was following along. By the time we got home, I was carrying bags full of clothes I didn't care about, but that she seemed thrilled over. She thought she was winning. That night, as I unpacked the bags, she leaned against the doorframe, smiling in a way I hadn't seen since the early days of our relationship. You look good like this, she murmured. It suits you. I nodded, smiling faintly, though inside I was miles away. It wasn't flattery. It was satisfaction that her puppet was finally dancing. But I wasn't dancing. I was pulling the strings. Over the next weeks, I leaned into it. I wore the clothes she picked, used the cologne she left on the dresser, even practiced the posture she insisted made me look more confident. And with every change, she grew more radiant, more smug. She'd parade me in front of her friends, boasting about how much I'd improved. I let her. I played the role, her Ryan in progress. Meanwhile, I kept my distance where it mattered. Emotionally, I was gone. I'd sit across from her at dinner, listening to her chatter about how Ryan had always been ambitious, how Ryan had this or that, and I'd smile politely, as though agreeing. In reality, I was cataloging every word, every slip, every sign of her obsession. She didn't notice. She was too busy congratulating herself. But others noticed. One evening, we went to a bar with a group of her friends. I wore the jacket she'd bought, the haircut she'd chosen. Halfway through the night, one of her friends squinted at me and laughed nervously. You know, for a second I thought you were Ryan walking in. The resemblance is crazy. The table went quiet for a beat. Daria's cheeks flushed, but she recovered quickly, laughing too loudly, brushing it off as coincidence. I just smiled into my drink. That was the moment I knew my plan was working. She was so blinded by her fantasy that she didn't see how transparent she'd become. And now even her friends were starting to connect the dots. When we got home, she was tense. She snapped at me over small things, leaving a glass on the counter, forgetting to take the trash out. She wasn't angry at me, not really. She was angry that her carefully constructed illusion had slipped in front of others. I let her snap. I apologized where needed, shrugged where I didn't. The calmer I was, the more unbalanced she grew. At the same time, I began feeding her rope. Small lies, carefully crafted. I'd tell her I was working late when I wasn't. I'd leave receipts from restaurants she didn't know about. I'd let her wonder if I was slipping away, if her control was cracking. And she took the bait. One night she confronted me, her voice sharp but shaky. "Are you seeing someone else?" she asked. I looked at her calmly, tilted my head, and said nothing for a long moment. Then I smiled faintly. "Why would you think that?" Her eyes darted, her hands fidgeted, and I knew I'd hit the nerve I wanted. She'd built this perfect project, her step-by-step plan, but suddenly the puppet wasn't predictable anymore. Suddenly, he might have his own secrets. The irony made me want to laugh. She was obsessed with shaping me into Ryan. Yet here she was, terrified that I might become someone she couldn't control at all. I didn't confirm or deny anything. I let the silence stretch. And from that night forward, her behavior changed. She became clingier, more attentive. She'd cook meals, leave notes, even try to seduce me with the kind of energy she hadn't shown in months. It was all desperation, all fear that I might slip through her fingers. I let her. But behind the scenes, I was preparing the final act. I reached out to Evan, the friend who'd seen her with Ryan. I didn't tell him everything, just enough to confirm my suspicions. He'd seen them together more than once, always looking too comfortable to be just friends. His words were steady, but I could hear the disgust under them. He told me I didn't deserve that. I agreed. Then, carefully, I began to plan. The first step was patience. I needed her to feel safe, triumphant. So I leaned harder into the role. I even suggested we take a weekend trip together, just the two of us. Her eyes lit up immediately, proof, in her mind, that her plan was working, that her perfect project was finally becoming the man she wanted. She didn't realize the trip wasn't for her victory. It was for her downfall. In the days leading up to it, I let her gush. She told her friends, her coworkers, probably even Ryan, that things were better than ever. She bragged about how much I'd grown, how I was finally ambitious, how she'd inspired me to change. She truly believed she'd won. And I played along, smiling, nodding, making reservations for a cabin outside the city. A quiet place, no neighbors, no easy way home without a car. She thought it was romantic. I knew it was the perfect stage. The night before we left, I stood by the window while she packed, humming cheerfully, tossing outfits into a bag. My reflection in the glass showed the haircut she'd chosen, the clothes she'd bought, the man she thought she had created. But inside, I was nothing like the man in her notebook. I was sharper now, colder, deliberate. Every step had been calculated, every smile a mask, every silence a weapon. She thought she'd built Ryan 2.0, but what she'd really built was her own executioner. As she zipped the suitcase shut and turned to me with a satisfied smile, I felt it, the calm before the storm, the quiet before everything unraveled. The final step was coming, and when it landed, it would leave her with nothing but the echo of her own list, mocking her in the silence she could never escape. The cabin sat at the end of a narrow gravel road, surrounded by dark pines that swayed in the late autumn wind. I'd chosen it carefully, not too remote, but far enough from the city that she couldn't just storm out and call a cab. One bus passed the area twice a day, and the next town was 12 miles away. It was quiet, isolated, perfect. She loved it instantly. As soon as we pulled up, she bounded out of the car, clutching her jacket tight against the cold, her voice rising in delight. She walked the deck, peeked through the windows, and announced that it was exactly the kind of romantic getaway we needed. I smiled, carrying our bags inside, though in my head the word romantic sounded like a bad joke. The first evening passed easily enough. We cooked pasta together, drank cheap wine, played cards by the fireplace. She curled up against me on the couch, radiating contentment, utterly convinced this was her reward for molding me into her image. Her hand slipped under my shirt at one point, her lips brushing my ear, and she whispered how proud she was of me. It took everything in me not to laugh. I let her fall asleep on the couch, head in my lap, while I stared at the fire and let the hours slide by. Her breathing was steady, soft. She looked peaceful. For a moment, I almost let myself remember the woman I thought she was in the beginning, before the notebook, before Ryan's ghost had seeped into every conversation. But the memory felt fake now, like someone else's dream. When she stirred, I lifted her carefully and carried her to bed. She sighed, nestling into the blankets, whispering something half asleep that I couldn't even make out. I lay down beside her, staring at the ceiling beams until dawn lightened the sky. The second day was when everything changed. We hiked a short trail in the morning, her chatting the whole way about where we could go next time, what trips we should plan, what our future looked like. She sounded like a woman who already saw herself married, settled, victorious. I let her talk, nodding at the right times, occasionally smiling. But inside, I was counting the hours. By the afternoon, We were back at the cabin, sitting by the fire again. She scrolled through her phone while I pretended to read a book. I could feel the tension building inside me, the way a storm builds just beyond the horizon. I had rehearsed this moment 100 times in my head, and yet now that it was close, it didn't feel rehearsed at all. It felt inevitable. I closed the book and set it aside. She glanced up, distracted. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice steady. She looked at me, head tilted, eyebrows raised. "About what?" I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I stood, walked over to the small table by the window, and picked up her notebook. I had slipped it into my bag before we left, knowing this moment would need proof. Her expression changed the instant she saw it. The casual curiosity drained away, replaced by a flicker of panic she tried to cover with a smile. "Why are you bringing that here?" she asked lightly. I opened it to the first page, the one that had started everything. Step 1. Step 2. Ryan's name written in her looping handwriting. I held it up so she could see. "You wanted me to dress like him," I said quietly. "Earn like him. Be him. Tell me, was there ever a version of me you actually wanted?" She laughed, too loud, too fast. "That was a joke. Notes. You're seriously still hung up on that? You've been doing so well lately, I thought we were past it." Her tone was mocking, but her hands betrayed her. She clenched them in her lap, knuckles white. I didn't shout. I didn't need to. You never wanted me. You wanted Ryan. You wanted a project you could reshape into something familiar. You think I didn't notice? The haircuts, the clothes, the way you smiled every time I ticked another box off your little list. You weren't proud of me. You were proud of yourself. Like a sculptor admiring her clay. Her mouth opened, then closed. She started to speak, stopped, then tried again. "You're overreacting. You're twisting things. I wanted the best for you. That's all." I stepped closer, notebook still in hand. "You wanted control. That's not love. That's obsession." Her face hardened. "And what are you going to do about it? Leave? You won't. You can't. You're nothing without me. You think anyone else is going to put up with you? I gave you direction. I gave you." I cut her off. "You gave me a reason to hate you." Silence. The fire popped, embers shifting. She blinked, her lips tightening, suddenly unsure. I set the notebook on the table, pushed it toward her. "Here's your masterpiece. Here's your plan. Finish it without me." Her eyes widened, and for the first time since this began, I saw fear. Real fear. She realized I wasn't bluffing. I grabbed my bag, already packed. I'd made sure of that earlier, tucking my clothes and essentials away while she showered. I slung it over my shoulder, walked to the door, and paused. She scrambled up from the couch, voice sharp now. "Wait. You can't just walk out. You brought me here. You don't get to make me the villain." I turned back, met her gaze, and let the words fall, steady and final. Step 1, pack. Step 2, leave. Her face crumpled, fury and desperation colliding, but I didn't stay to watch the explosion. I opened the door, stepped into the cold evening air, and pulled it shut behind me. The gravel crunched under my boots as I walked to the car. I didn't look back. The drive back to the city was long, but the silence inside me was louder than any music I could have played. I expected to feel triumphant, but what I felt instead was clean, as though I'd finally stripped off a coat of grime that had been clinging to me for months. She didn't call that night. Not the next. But by the third day, my phone lit up with messages. Long paragraphs, accusations, pleas, alternating between love and hate. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. By the end of the week, I heard from Evan that Ryan had dropped her too. Whatever she'd been trying to rekindle, he wasn't interested anymore. Word had spread among her circle that she'd been trying to recreate him in me, and the whispers weren't kind. She'd built her entire sense of superiority on being in control, and now she was unraveling. I didn't watch it happen firsthand. I didn't care to. I moved out of the apartment within the month, found a smaller place on my own, closer to work. For the first time in years, my space was mine again. No lists, no comparisons, no ghost of someone else haunting every room. And yet, sometimes late at night, I'd think of that notebook, of her handwriting, her underlines, her careful planning. I'd wonder how long she'd been seeing me as nothing more than clay to be molded, a stand-in for a man who'd already discarded her. But those thoughts didn't sting anymore. They only reminded me of why I'd walked away. The last message she ever sent me came 2 months later. It was short, just 3 words. "You ruined me." I didn't reply, because she was wrong. She'd ruined herself the moment she decided I wasn't worth loving as I was. All I did was remind her of the truth. And the truth was simple, written in the same rhythm she'd once used to rewrite my life. Step 1, pack. Step 2, leave.